Are live, so we can just amble about. There's obviously going to be zero people here, so we'll just give
Exactly.
people a
Yeah,
couple of
yeah.
minutes.
It's a slow process. Yeah, and I'll call the banners, get everybody in, when it comes to numbers. But how are we?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. All things considered, I I played a tournament at the weekend, and I lost to somebody in the final.
This is how it goes. This is how it
Yeah,
goes.
I
But
know.
you got it. The wins come sometimes. The losses come sometimes. Depending on who you are, sometimes the wins come more than the losses. But
Sometimes, yeah,
we'll,
yeah,
we'll get there.
but
We'll get there.
yeah, like you say, it's one of those things. But how about you? How did your weekend
I
go?
I had a great weekend. All sorts of great things happening, including winning a Magic the Gathering tournament, which
Oh
hasn't
wow.
happened in a while. Which hasn't happened in a while. So yeah, so we're back on top, king of
I
the castle.
I mean, I'd imagine the pandemic had something to do with that, though, right? If it wasn't for the pandemic, you'd be winning tournaments left, right, and
I mean,
center.
that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, funny story about that, but sure, we can get into it as things go. Yeah,
Sure. Um, but no, seriously. Yeah. Congratulations for the weekend. We'll talk more about it properly once we've got people through the door, and yeah,
yeah,
I am
yeah,
happy for
yeah.
you, and I hope to be joining you. Um,
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you will.
yeah, I mean, like we say this. There's going to be like 30 other people in that room who want to do the exact same thing. And many of them are going to be very capable of doing that as well. We have the you know I don't know what other teams exist in Ireland these days, but the Sharks, like, is there going to be any better team than the Sharks?
Well, that's it. Yeah, I think it really just goes to show how far a group can go once they work together, test together, even just discussing strategies and decks together, and like the lending of cards,
Oh yeah.
between multiple people. It's such a huge it's such a huge resource, and yeah, you can see usually you do see kind of pockets of groups of friends or teammates all doing well together at tournaments.
I believe that's Kev in the chat there. Hey Kev, Al is much quieter. Okay, let's turn Al up.
Oh, turn me up,
There
turn
you
me
go.
up, baby.
Maybe turn me down a bit too. I think I might be a bit loud, and then we'll turn you up and we'll equalize. Thanks very much for that. Assuming that is Kev. Thanks very much for that. Appreciate it. But yeah, one thing I did want to bring up as well, though. Two northern players came down for that tournament. Two top eights. 100% conversion record for the top eight. The North will rise
Yeah.
again.
I mean, and this is something back in the PPTQ days. That's something we constantly saw. You would come down in a group and you would all do well as a group. And I think Kieran was saying before how, yeah, as a community, you have always just have been doing consistently well.
Yeah.
Which yeah, I guess for all the reasons of supporting.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. We had a very tight knit group here, which I hope comes back. Like Steve Madden is still interested. There might be some others that want to rejoin as well. Rowan Thompson, very very good player. Hopefully she comes back for us. As well. That's what we were saying as well. Dean and I on the way back home, we were saying that maybe us both top eighting and maybe generate a bit of buzz again and get people like, yeah, I want to go to paper tournaments again. Like, that's what we would love. So
exactly, yeah. And it's like, especially when people see, oh, this person who did well before still doing well now, maybe that can be me, and then people come out from the woodwork, so to speak.
exactly.
Yeah, which we've been
Exactly.
seeing, yeah, at all these.
All right, so I think we've given enough time. We will get stuck straight into the podcast. And this is my first time ever doing the intro. Niall and Kieran have always handled it before. This is going to be a first for Pocket Jaces. So here we go.
Let's do it.
You're listening to Pocket Jaces, the podcast where your hosts Kieran and DJ bring you magic musings, poker ponderings, and general gaming goings on with you one brag, beat, and brew at a time. Welcome to Pocket Jaces, everybody. You may notice that there is something up with that intro, being that our hosts DJ and Kieran, one of them not here, but I think we have found quite the suitable replacement in Mr. Alan Harrison. Say hello, Al.
Hello. I am Alan Harrison.
Very, very good. Very good. So yeah, I mean, we had some things at the weekend. We had a tournament that we played. We may have faced each other in the final of that
We
tournament.
may, yeah, we don't want to bury the hatchet. No, bury the lead. We
Sure.
want to bury the hatchet and then bury the lead. It's funny how those phrases are similar. We won't bury the lead yet, but there will be some drama unfolding on this here podcast.
Yeah, so I've actually lured Al here under false pretenses and told Kieran to go away because this is actually just me beating Al to a pulp verbally over the internet for destroying me. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. That's the thing.
I mean, this is and I've actually we'll talk about the actual game I suppose later on, but I've actually gone through turn by turn to figure out like how did that happen, and I was looking forward to kind of a long grindy game of resources back and forth, but
I'm
yeah, it
sorry I
was
couldn't
only
give
a
that
few
to you.
turns. I
Yeah.
mean, that's I should have probably should have just looked a few more times to
Yeah, you should have
that could
given me a
happen.
chance. Come on. Yeah, like game one in particular is one of the strangest games of Magic I think I've ever played. Because you're on two lands for, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, like 7 turns. You had
Yeah,
two lands in play.
it was huge.
And for anybody that knows anything about the red black deck and Pioneer, it's mono 3 drops. So like, it's not like you were able to do that much with the 2 mana. But I I was flooded. And in general, a general rule of thumb is that, screw is going to be flood. And I'm not sure if, like, I had to have made a mistake at some point because it just feels wrong that I couldn't take advantage of that. There was definitely a turn where I played the second Croxa. I think in my head I hadn't played a land yet because the plan was to get that Croxa in the graveyard and then cast it straight away, escape it straight away. But then as soon as I put the Croxa in the graveyards, I asked the question like, oh crap, have I played a land this turn? And then the consensus was yes, I have played a land this turn. Like, oh crap, okay, well that's really bad for me. And then you did have the second copy of Graveyard Trespass, but you had found your third land by this point. So I think maybe what I should have done is waited a turn to play. Well, obviously, what I should have done is waited a turn to play the next land and be able to do all that. But I guess, in my head, like I'd already shortcutted it. Like, okay, I'm going to play this land. I'm going to skip the Croxa. So I had the plan in head. The execution was not correct because I had already played a land.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and especially when you're flooded out like that, a big play like that, especially a man-intensive play like that, can really kind of shift the game in your favor. When I'm already so stretched thin on resources, yeah, Crocs coming out as a 6/6 would have definitely taxed me so much that I won't be coming back.
Yeah.
But
can you make me feel better by saying you had like a fatal push or something?
I don't think I might have. I might see. I think this is. I feel like the spectators were kind of, there was some eye rolling when I cast my second Graveyard Trespasser to nab that second Croxet. So yeah, 2 Croxets went into the yard, and then I had answers to both of them once I hit my third land. And then I was going to think, oh, people are going to think I'm so lucky the fact I had 2. But I mean, I drew them instead of drawing lands.
Yeah, exactly.
So I of course, I'm not playing on my third land drop. Of course, my hand's going to be full of gas, as they say.
100%.
Yeah, when it was, I was surprised as to how well the deck was still, my side is still able to function, even just with the 2 lands, just from the stomping. I think got 2 stomps off, and then you took 5 at one point from a castle.
I did, yeah. That maybe that should be somewhat of an indication like how strange that game was. That I was willing to just take 5 off a castle. I was just like mono lands. But that's the game we play. Whenever we sign up for any tournaments, we sign up for those risks as well. Like, it's gonna happen. So like, yeah, I mean, the way I see it is that I would much rather lose if I have to lose it all, then I'm going to lose to a friend, and I'm going to lose to someone that I'm going to be happy to see at whatever tournament they're qualifying for, and in this case, I'm very happy to see you going there. So,
Cheers, thanks.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And then all I can think about coming up to the War Chest tournament Saturday with another qualifier on Saturday, and it's like, all I'm thinking is like, God, how unstoppable would, because I know you had Alex Ball on the podcast before.
Yeah.
Also talk about victories, playing the same archetype as well. Like if you had the 3 of us in the same archetype going over to the same regional championships, we'd be an unstoppable force.
Yeah. Like I would actually love if all the RCQ winners got together, formed a team, and had as regular playtesting sessions as they can, because obviously people have lives. It's not going to be people aren't going to be able to commit to loads and loads of testing. Like, I remember whenever I was younger, I had a part-time job. I didn't have any overheads to worry about. Me and Dean Convery, who came down to the tournament last Saturday as well, like, we would have literally stayed at his house for a week and just played Magic over and over and over in the lead up to a tournament, and it was great. It's some of the best times I've ever had. I understand that that's probably not going to happen this time around, but yeah, that's the sort of thing you would love to see. And then the whole team show up with the same 75. Everybody's talked about. Everybody agrees. Yeah, it would be great. And like having yourself and Alex Ball, two very very good Magic Gathering players. Yeah, it's I think we're going to be in good hands. I think Ireland is not going to embarrass itself for a change. That's what I want.
Exactly. I know I've embarrassed Ireland a number of times going abroad to these things, so that will no longer happen.
All right, so yeah, we generally do a bit of a preamble before we start everything. I guess that was our little preamble, our little stories. Al and I played in the final. Al hammered me, and yeah, I think it's safe to say that Al's you had a very good weekend. Yeah,
Yeah, it went well. Yeah, it went well. It went according to plan. Yeah, yeah.
brilliant. So yeah, another RCQ coming up this Saturday. I am at, will I see you there?
I might come down and see the end. Yeah, I'm not. I don't plan on playing it.
Cool.
'Cause, like
Well,
I don't want to cross streams. It's
I may well see you after all is said and done.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, in the Magic Gathering world, we're obviously going to do an interview about how the tournaments went, and also just to let you know, fine club band, Big Love Allen, a legend and a Slayer. That is a message for you. So yeah, I mean, Magic Gathering news. Dominaria previews have started coming. Um, is it safe to say that what has been spoiled so far, in like my opinion, is that I'm a little unimpressed. What do you think so far? Have you been keeping up with the spoilers? Do you know?
Yeah, I have been. Yeah, and I think I suppose it's one of these things that whenever a new card is revealed, there's like a little bit of a discussion around each one. So I feel like we're talking a lot about individual cards and come up with what they'll do, but we're not kind of yet seeing a potential massive impact to a format. And I think it's always so hard to tell kind of during these spoiler seasons. I constantly remind people that, Aether Revolt spoiler, the spoiler season, they dumped a whole load of kind of random uncommons on the last day without any kind of fanfare. And then Fellow Their Guardian was one of those, and that's it's the most impactful. So there's always the most impactful card could always be one of the last ones in. So but I think what we have now definitely, is interesting. Definitely worth discussing, and I think as well because it's also in the context of standard, which I just haven't been looking at all. So I know it
Yeah,
is very hard to look at a high power format like Pioneer and kind of try and see what might make its way into that. But especially when we're talking about standard, we can certainly see a lot of these being big players.
yeah. Like I say, I haven't been keeping up with standards myself at all, really. I'm led to believe there's good reason to keep up with standards. Going forwards. Hint, hint. Next RCQ season. So definitely want to keep an eye on how standard is going to proceed from here. I know the last Pro Tour was won by Jessica Yanada. Esper Midrange was meant to make a big showing, but since then, I don't really know a lot. So I'm keeping an eye on these, keeping an eye on the standard format, going to see how it evolves. I have no idea how to approach that format, though. I have no idea, like, if, for example, a Gianni Sleeper Agent is going to be any good in standard. My first impression is that the card isn't very good, so then it's not going to see any play. But I just don't know. So definitely want to keep an eye on that. I think it's a good thing for standards to be important again as well. I think I know a lot of people love playing Eternal formats. I like Modern. I've really enjoyed Pioneer so far, but I also really enjoy like a constantly shifting and changing metagame as well, which Pioneer and Modern aren't really. Whereas standards, with each set that's released, the best deck changes every time. I actually kind of enjoy that. I might be in the minority of that. I'm not sure what you think about that.
Yeah, I definitely be exactly the same. Yeah, I really like standard for those very same reasons you outlined, and especially like when you're talking about, yeah, it shifts whenever a new set comes out. But then also when you're kind of down, in if it's the Moto leagues or for in the PTQs or like prayer for GPs, you see the meta shifting like week to week. It's you see just different archetypes emerge on top and get pushed back down again on a weekly basis. And I think I really do love that churn of that format. The format kind of as small and as low powered as standard when it does that. But it certainly it is daunting me now kind of getting into it because I've no cards
Yeah.
from the last couple of years. So I could definitely see that being a barrier of entry, knowing that things change so much. But when you're in there, it is like really exciting and really just fun to see. Yeah, like you're saying, how it changes from.
Yeah,
That.
I'm in the same boat. I own basically 0 standard legal cards. I just happen to have 4 copies of Rafine, because I actually had 8 of them because I was like, oh, this is going to be the best card going into the Pro Tour. The price is going to explode, and I'm going to be rich. Didn't quite work out that way. I didn't lose much. I think I lost about a fiver on the exchange, but because it just didn't rise in price at all. So yeah, I mean that's my fault, my bad. But I still have 4 copies of those, so I am on the lookout to see if Esper mid-range is still going to be a good deck. I also have in the back of my head that I should probably buy my copies of the Wandering Emperor right now.
Yeah, because that price is only going to go up. It's never going to go down. So
Yeah,
are you
that's what
better
I'm
off getting
thinking.
on now? It's always hard to pull the trigger on those kind of things. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
know, because the cheapest Wandering Emperors I could find are €30.
oh,
It's not chump change, you know.
yeah,
So like I say, it's hard to commit to it and be like, okay, I'm gonna buy my playset, and even though in the back of your head you know like this is probably gonna go up to like 40-50 euros at its peak, like you know that's probably gonna happen, but
mm,
it's still like there's still something in me anyway that's like, I could buy food with this, I could survive with this money, or I can buy 4 pieces of cardboard.
yeah. That's it. And it's so hard to kind of. Even though I'm always happy, kind of, to hand money over and happy, kind of put everything in my shop cart. It's when I get the email of like your purchase has been confirmed. I'm like, oh my god, I just do this. I have 20 fight rigging on the way.
Oh, brilliant.
So maybe that'll put us in the big books. But
Yeah.
I don't know if this is an attempt for me to manipulate the market by saying this. So
It surely is.
yeah,
Everybody buy your copies of Fight Rigging now. It's pretty funny that obviously the Magic market is completely unregulated, and it's like this sort of thing can happen. I'm not saying that pocket Jaces are going to get involved in market manipulation, but it could make us very rich, so we might.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But yeah, I've picked out a couple of spoilers in particular. We got a little off the boil there. I've picked out a couple of spoilers in particular just kind of highlights like how I've picked one card that I think is actually very good, and three cards that people were probably very excited for that just very important from a lore side of things. But the cards themselves I just don't think are very good. I'll see what you think, Al, and by all means in the
Yeah.
chat if you disagree. Uh, yeah, give us your opinion. Just before we move on, there we have Kevin chat. I fell off buying Metook and Wandering Emperors. They are likely to be included in the Challenger decks in November. There you go.
Yeah, this is always consideration now. If something's printed
Yeah, yeah,
in a challenger deck, the price is just going to plummet. So you
yeah.
can't
That's a really good point.
really help.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, because I remember it happened with Stone. The first one was Stoneforge Mystic, I think, obviously.
yeah.
Which was 20-25 pounds in standard at the time. It could have been more, and then that one plummeted. It happened. Did it happen with Arclight Phoenix? I feel like it happened with Arclight
I
Phoenix.
think so. Yeah, yeah. That would have been one. And
Yeah,
I remember the first one I saw was Hardy Kieran was one that was like that was always
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
€20. I remember I was planning on changing deck at a GP in Birmingham, and right before I was like, "What'll I do? I don't want to. I never played any vehicles decks because I never owned Hardy Kierans." Then I saw Hardy Kierans for sale for like €2 each. I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Someone has a decimal placed in the wrong place." But then I bought them and realized, well, the price had plummeted. Yeah, because they're printed in it is showdown challenger something or other.
Yeah. I think it was around the same time that something happened with Arclight Phoenix, because I remember GP Birmingham 4 or 5 years ago, as one of my prize packs, I opened a foil Arclight Phoenix, and this card was just exploding in
Uh,
popularity at the time. It's like, this card is going to hit foil Tarmogoyf levels. It's going to be worth hundreds of euros. I am in the money. This is going straight in the binder and being saved for a couple of years. And you know what? That card is almost worth foil Tarmogoyf levels. They're both about 10, £15. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
and you had Pascal Maynard a few years ago almost had his reputation torn apart over
He
a foil
did.
Tarmogoyf. And look at it now.
I
The
am
ebb and flow.
I am very adamant that Pascal made the right choice. Pascal, if you're listening, we support you. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Anyone who was on the side that he did something wrong is an idiot. End of story. That's like yeah.
Thick Hetta in the chat could be Thichetta. The best Pioneer player in Ireland. Why, thank you very much, Thichetta. I graciously accept your applause. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
I really appreciate DJ you coming here so I can interview you about being the best Pioneer player in Ireland.
I know. I have invited you on to interview me. Yeah, that's just the state of affairs we're at right now. So, okay, spoilers. Karn Living Legacy. 4 colorless mana for a Planeswalker, a Karn Planeswalker. +1, create a tapped Power Stone token. It's an artifact with tap, add colorless. This mana can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell. -1, pay any amount of mana, look at that many cards from the top of your library, then put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. -7, you get an emblem with tap and untapped artifact you control. This emblem deals 1 damage to any target and starting loyalty of 4. This card seems atrocious to me. It does nothing, right?
Yeah, that literally does nothing, and it barely ramps, and it barely gives you cards, and it barely protects itself. It does, yeah, it really does absolutely nothing. Yeah, it's very strange. Very strange.
Yeah, like I think it was Kieran actually made the point of the -1 as well. If you play this for 4 mana, you can't even activate the -1 straight away. Like, you have to create the Power Stone token, go up to 5, doesn't protect itself. It'll probably just get attacked and die, and then. Yeah, like you -1 and say you pay 3 mana on the next turn, then you only you're looking for a 2-drop then? Like that doesn't seem good. Just loads of things wrong with this one, I think.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tron. I played all the variants of Tron, and I always get very excited when a new Karn is about to be spoiled. And the last two Karns have been hits in their own ways, and they have done different things. But this one just does nothing. It's it's a fact that it's just really rare to see a Planeswalker that requires mana, an additional cost of mana to do that stuff to use an ability at all. And like when this was first spoiled, there's some speculation that maybe Power Stone tokens are maybe there's a bunch of different sources for those. Maybe it's like Oko with food. That if there's plenty of food, maybe Oko will do something. And turned out Oko did a lot. But so far, yeah, I don't think I've seen any other sources of Power Stone tokens, or anything else that cares about Power Stone tokens. So it is just take up to make a mana rock on turn 4.
Yeah,
that comes in tapped. You can't even use straight away. So yeah, it's
and I don't see any casual appeal for this card either. Like this it just has all the same problems in a format like Commander, right? You're just going to play this card, it's going to get attacked, and it's going to die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even its ult doesn't win the game straight away, which I guess is the standard of ults these days. And it's it's the ult itself still needs a lot of support to do anything. So it's not even a win condition by itself if it's not attacked. I suppose, I guess you're right in saying you play this, you get attacked straight away, but maybe no one's going to want to attack it.
Maybe. And then all of a sudden you have an emblem with tap and untapped artifact you control. Obviously you're going to build your deck around that if that is your plan to get to that emblem. But even that's sure, okay. I have seen better. Thichetta in the chat with Thran Dynamo Atome. Much worse than that card.
And then I can't help but think that maybe during development this was a lot stronger and maybe it was brought down. Surely, I think that it's a really good point that this has no casual appeal. So it having no casual appeal, this makes me think there has to be something we're missing. It can't be this bad.
Yeah, like something just got removed at the last minute.
Yeah, maybe something like that. Or maybe I doubt there's something we're missing, but I think it's so bad it's making me think I must be missing something. But
I feel like you could give this starting loyalty 10. Obviously, the ultimates would have to be bumped up a little, but I feel like you could give this starting loyalty 10 and still nobody would play it.
It could be 1 mana. Oh my god, we don't need to get hyper. We don't need to bring in any hyperbole to make our point. It could be 0 mana. Would still see no play. First 0 mana Planeswalker. Actually, maybe it'd be good as a 0 mana Planeswalker. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it would.
A meaningless conversation. People say, "Oh, if it costs this much, it'd be so much better." Of course it would. That's a great enlightening conversation we're having. Yeah, let's pretend the cards are different to make them good. No, it's as it is. We can both agree it's bad,
Yeah,
and I haven't seen anyone arguing that it's good for any good reason.
no, not at all. Next card, Ajani Sleeper Agent, which is one colorless, green, Phyrexian, green, white, and white mana. So obviously you can pay 2 life instead of the Phyrexian, green, white mana. +1, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, put it into your hand. Otherwise, you may put it on the bottom of your library. -3, distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among up to 3 target creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. -6, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. And if you complete Ajani Sleeper Agent, as in if you pay the Phyrexian mana for it, it comes in with 2 less loyalty with a starting loyalty of 4. Again, very similar problems to Karn. There's no way to protect itself. +1 to generate potential card advantage is immediately makes it better than Karn, in my opinion. But not being able to -3 this, like on the turn you play it, if you complete it, really hurts, because it's going to be very hard for you to protect that Ajani and try and run away with the game. And at 4 mana, it just seems like there's so many better things you can be doing with 4 mana, right?
Yeah, and my good reaction to seeing this straight away was, oh, it's a 3-mana planeswalker that puts 3 counters on 3 creatures getting vigilance. That's great, but yeah, like I said, you can't do that if you've paid the Phyrexian mana cost.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as a 4-mana planeswalker, this is quite bad. So I think certainly the flexibility does give us some value, and it is. I mean, even both of those abilities are just very standard Ajani abilities. Which I'm sure there's probably better options.
Yeah.
Especially, it's one of these things like you're playing it, probably playing it in a creature heavy deck, which probably doesn't want many planeswalkers, and especially if it's competing with, say, something like Echo Company, it would need a very strong justification to get in there. So yeah, I think it definitely, like I said, has the same issues as Karn.
Yeah. One plus I will certainly give it is that the emblem, or the ultimate, is pretty cool. You get an emblem that gives poison counters. Poison counters I think are cool. As long as you're not getting killed on turn 2 by an Inkamoth Nexus or something. I think poison counters are pretty cool. It's different, it's original, it's interesting, I think. But yeah, we'll move on. We'll move on to Sheoldred, who is another big player in this whole story. Another relatively iconic character who you'd think would get a really powerful card to match. This one is much more up in the air than the other two. I don't think it's quite as cut and dry. I think the card's bad. I would like to hear your opinion. 2 black, Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. 4/5. That is Sheoldred.
Yeah, it's actually it's a very straightforward design, very small amount of text. I actually think this is quite good. I think everyone was disappointed because there was a fake version that went around circulated on the internet.
Yes.
That was extremely overpowered. It was, and I feel stupid now forever thinking that was real, because that was obviously just super busted. And this is just a much simpler design than that, obviously. And I think it actually is quite good, because I think in the decks that this goes in, you might have some kind of rummage or loot effects that will be drawing and discarding cards, or you're drawing lots of cards at once. I think obviously whenever opponent draws a card is also something that's going to obviously trigger at least once a turn. I think that kind of reach is quite good, and it by itself is just 4-mana 4/5 body is quite good, especially for black. I think Death Touch, I suppose, is a bit of a miss, because I never really understood why did they put Death Touch on big creatures.
I know, right? I have also been asking this question for a while to anybody that'll listen whenever the topic comes up. Why do big creatures need Death Touch? And why doesn't every huge creature have trample? I just don't get it from a flavor perspective of, like, an idiot attacking and then a squirrel hops in front of it and nobody takes any damage. Like, it's blocked. The squirrel was able to intercept this huge dinosaur and now nobody's taking any damage. I don't get it. I don't think it works. I don't think it works from a flavor standpoint.
The dinosaur tripped over the squirrel, killed the squirrel, was tripped over. Squirrel's dead, but everyone else survived.
Right. Yeah. Okay. It all makes sense now. I will never raise the question again.
There's always a flavor reason, but yeah, yeah, again, I hate when card evaluations go down to, if I had this instead, it'd be good. I mean, if I had Menace, it would be sick.
Sure. I
Yeah,
was thinking like it feels like it kind of feels like this card maybe should have had lifelink or maybe could have had lifelink at one point. Feels like from a flavor perspective, lifelink maybe makes sense here. To
yeah.
like death touch sort of makes sense with people losing life. Maybe I'm stretching there, and then lifelink makes sense with gaining life, obviously. Yeah, if like the addition of lifelink again, it's not the most useful conversation to have. Like, oh, if this card had this ability, I think like lifelink would have went a long way to making this card like very playable, very very good. I think. Um,
Yep.
Lifelink would have been huge. Menace also, I agree. Like Death Touch Menace is a pretty potent combo. You know, guaranteed 2-for-1. You love to see it. Yeah, like I am willing to accept that I could be wrong on Shieldred. For now, I don't think its impact. Like in my head, I just can't imagine it being that impactful. So we'll wait and see how it goes. My prediction is Shieldred is bad. But happy to be wrong on that. The last card I have here is Archangel of Wrath. A two colorless, white and white. Kicker. Kicker is a great mechanic. I think it's one of the most universally loved mechanics out there. Kicker, black and or red mana. Flying, lifelink. When Archangel of Wrath enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, it deals 2 damage to any target, and if it was kicked twice, it deals 2 damage to any target. So 4 damage total. I really like this card. Yeah, like a 3 or a 4 mana 3/4 flying with lifelink is already a decent rate. In fact, I think it's a pretty good rate. And if you kick this twice, you get to kill something and gain 4 life, which is a huge swing. Yeah, I think this card is really good. Al, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this certainly stands out amongst the four, being the best, certainly
Mm-hmm.
best so far. Yeah, I think I just love this new design, this new take on kicker, where you're paying 2 pips of two other colors, or you can pay one or both. And it just gives you a lot of options. I think even in terms of deck building, it gives you a lot of options. Like it doesn't necessarily need to go into a Mardu deck.
Yeah,
This could be something like green, like if you had I don't know, like a value mid range red white deck that ran Fabled Mirror Breaker. So sometimes you might happen to have a treasure token lying around to get the double kicker. And sometimes even I think even just it coming down and killing a creature would be huge.
yep.
Even if you just get one of those kickers off, and a little bit of life swing as well. Certainly be a massive stabilizer for mid range decks against aggressive decks. Yeah, I think this is pretty good.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you say, even if you only kick this once, this card's still really good. It can be played in any red white deck, any black white deck for that matter as well. And if you just so happen to be playing all 3 colors, then fantastic. And even in that 3 color deck, this doesn't have to be a 6 mana spell. Like this card is very good at 4 mana, 5 mana, and 6 mana. I think it's a really well designed card. It's really really good, really strong, and I think we will be seeing a decent amount of this card in standard. I think. Disclaimer: haven't paid attention to standard, but I think it will be there.
Yep.
All
Yeah,
right.
definitely. I agree with that. Yeah.
So those are just some of the cards that have been spoiled so far. We will probably go over more of them as they come out over the next few weeks. Those are just a couple of picks that I have pulled out of. These are the cards DJ's disappointed with. This is like the only card that DJ likes. There is one big omission there, which we will talk about because it kind of links into the Pioneer discussion and the deck choice of Al and myself. So we will get there. We will get there. Any Liliana of the Veil fans out there, we will get there. Spoilers out of the way. Al, it's time for the interview. Are you
Oh,
ready?
great. Here we go. Oh,
Right.
I am ready. I am
The
ready.
famous Pocket Jaces interview. All right. Al Harrison, it is great to have you here. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. Well, yeah, my name is Alan Harrison. I am a scientist from Dublin. I've been playing Magic since 2015. And yeah, I'm back. I'm winning. I suppose yeah, we'll get into it. I suppose, but at the start of COVID, I sold my collection, so I was just completely out. And then just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Mm-hmm.
as always goes.
I think that's true for quite a few people actually. Like Alex
Yeah.
said the same thing. I was in the same boat. I had no intention of playing Magic again. Like whenever I won nationals, I was like, okay, everything I ever wanted from Magic, I have got now. I played at the World Championships. Uh, I'll leave it now. COVID's they're killing off competitive play, and then the pandemic goes away, and Wizards say, hey, you liked PTQs and stuff, right? Here's 5 of them a season. Like, okay, I'm back in, I guess. So yeah, I think like it's definitely pulled quite a few of us back in, and it's really good to see too. It's really good to see like this, especially like collaboration between like different parts of the country now coming together and talking about decks, and like you said at the top of the show, we're gonna start like testing together. We're gonna start, everybody's gonna have this massive card pool to lend cards out and stuff. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Um, but yeah, so you mentioned that you started playing Magic in 2015. When did you first start playing competitively? Was that always at the back of your mind, or was that something that just kind of naturally came along?
Yeah, so I think it kind of is something that naturally came along. So I suppose for context, when I started playing Magic, I was really just playing kind of once a week, on Thursdays, Thursday night standards. All I wanted to do at the time was just cast Ulomogs. I was playing whatever Eldrazi ramp deck was available at the time. But before Magic, I was playing a lot of Hearthstone. So Hearthstone for quite a while before Magic was my main kind of competitive outlet when it came to esports, whatever you want to call it, gaming in general. And I suppose for a while I was just kind of just playing Magic more as a casual hobby, and then kind of doing the real kind of the grind on Hearthstone, grinding up the ladder and playing in some competitive tournaments. And then even whenever I definitely enjoyed playing Magic a little bit more, whenever I played Magic, I used to just think, God, I wish I was as competent at this game as I was at Hearthstone. Um, and then yeah, really, it was literally just one day. It all just suddenly changed when I was I got home, was preparing for a Hearthstone tournament. I was on a call with somebody else who was going to give me advice and kind of what matchups to expect, and kind of I guess to test some matchups. And while I was in the middle of this call, I got a message from Gus from Gamers World saying that someone had dropped from their exclusive. I think they called it Store Championships at the time. They're kind of exclusive, kind of LGS, kind of end of year finals. That someone had dropped from them, and they wanted to give me the extra seat in there. So really, just for that moment, I just told the other guys on the call, but I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just go to this instead. I won't play tomorrow. I hung up, and then that's when I started. That was the moment I started playing competitively. And then yeah, I went to that event. I didn't do well, so I installed Magic Online, and that's the rest is history.
And then you were hooked from then on.
Exactly,
Well, it
exactly.
was a good decision.
Yeah, I think
I
it was.
dare
I think it
say.
was.
Yeah, like I played a little bit of competitive Hearthstone for a while as well. I remember going through that journey of like I was phasing out Magic at that point, but I still needed that competitive void fills, and I ended up going to Hearthstone for a little bit. But Magic the Gathering is just the best game set ever made.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to get away from. So you started playing competitively then. From that point onwards, would it be uh, fair to say that was it like a quick process of starting to rack up the wins, or what sort of accomplishments kind of came out of that then?
Yeah, so to be honest, it actually did change quite quickly. Because I suppose, yeah, I was playing a Magical Line. I had whatever deck I was playing in standard on Moto, and I was just really just grinding it out every night, and then going to Thursday night standard. So I began to just I just began to understand the game a lot more. Even though I was playing against people who, like, I always saw myself as being very new to the game, and I'd be playing against people who would have been playing for years and years and years, which I felt like I could never compete with. But then suddenly it came to a point where I was just playing Moto every night, and they weren't, and then that just gave me an edge. And then yeah, I think really once I started playing in PPTQs, I didn't do well in the first few, and then at one point, the first big one I won was in Kilkenny, and that was with a blue black Scarab God mid range deck. I know you have opinions on the Scarab God.
Oh,
I will not hear them.
no, I am a fan of the Scarab Gods. Dean Convery is bound to be in chat, and he can, yeah, he can do one. Scarab God, great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was yeah. So that was the first PPTQ I won, and then I just started winning the rest of them, and then I just went on a rampage of every season. I just have won and PPTQ, and then I always did quite well at the local, on that kind of local if you could call it even a national scene. But then I've always done really, really poorly at the next step, the kind of the regional, um, what do you call it at the time? RCQs, no,
Uh,
RPQs,
I
or PTQs.
RPTQs, yeah.
Yeah, RPTQs. So I guess that was kind of me kind of reaching my threshold, I guess my ceiling. But then I guess the tragedy that struck was I qualified. Now it was called the Players Tour at the time, but I will call it the PT.
Mm-hmm.
I qualified for the PT uh, in early 2020, and then I was supposed to play in the Players Tour in, I think they actually changed the location a few times. I think it was supposed to be in, I think it was actually supposed to be in Copenhagen, where I was supposed to play in the PT there, and then it was cancelled because of COVID. And then yeah, that was that. Everything began to wind down. I started playing. Oh, that PT was held on Arena then instead
Yeah.
because of COVID. Because I think they tried to change the venue, then they didn't. They cancelled it, and then they had it on online instead. And I just did terribly then on Arena, on that particular Arena event. And then I suppose even kind of even independent of COVID, there certainly was a lot of signs, in late 2019 that Watsy was kind of moving away from the previous kind of model of competitive play. And there certainly, I think the writing was on the wall even before COVID that competitive play was changing in a way that wouldn't benefit kind of people. I guess people at our level or in a community the size. So yeah, once that happened, I decided just to sell everything, and I said I was done.
Yeah.
My reign of championship was over, until now.
Until now. Yeah, I don't think anybody can fault you for coming to that conclusion. The first time around, or well, in 2019, like I do agree. It looked like Wizards were doing their best to just kind of move away from competitive scene completely. All the signs were there. And yeah, I'm just really glad that it's coming back. They're coming back around now. Because there's just every year it seemed like they had made another decision that really impacted this small tight knit community that we have here in Ireland. It all started with the removal of nationals. Then we started getting less and less PTQs. I mean, we usually only got like maximum 2 PTQs per season. But then they got rid of PTQs, which was like the only reason to prepare for anything in Ireland once nationals went. And then the WMCQs came about, and they were good for that like 3-month period. But then the rest of the 9 months, there was nothing to do. Then PPTQs came along, and I think it's safe to say like some of the older guards weren't enthused about playing a qualifier for another qualifier. I was one of them. I think I only ever played like 1 or 2 PPTQs at most. But then I also wasn't fully invested in Magic at that point. The way I feel like I am like these days, and the way I was maybe in like the mid 2000s, early 2010s. But now I think this is like a sweet spot for Wizards and the players, where these RCQs feel like a big deal. The tournament it qualifies you for is like feels like a European Championship, which sounds way cooler than going over to England and playing against like 100 English players. You get to play against the best of the best from Europe, which is going to be a really cool experience. And then if you do well at that, then hey, the Pro Tour. And also another thing about that is that it sounds like it's going to be like the top 32 finishers at that tournament. There's going to be a lot of people qualifying from that one tournament. It's not like you're qualifying for a tournament to only have the top 4 go. You're going to a tournament where a lot of people are going to get to go to the Pro Tour off the back of that. So yeah, that's something that's really appealing to me. And having loads of these qualifiers every season is something that really appeals to me as well. I really like having multiple things to prepare for, multiple reasons to want to play Magic, and none of the feel bads associated with having one tournament a season that you prepare really hard for, and then you just mulligan to Oblivion 2 rounds in a row and you're done. Like, that's it for another 3 months, So I think it's really cool. I think this is going to be a really, really good change for all of us. I think it's one of the best things to have happened to Irish Magic anyway for a long time. So yeah, talked about your accomplishments and stuff. Kind of brings us to the present day, where you've decided that Magic is worth playing again. Let's get back on the grind. And I think it's fair to say most of the RCQs this season were Pioneer. So there was a lot more stock put into our thoughts on Pioneer, what we were going to play, our choices for Pioneer, that kind of thing. So how did you go about preparing for the Pioneer RCQs, and what are your general thoughts of Pioneer as a whole?
Yeah, so I thought I always really just liked Pioneer as the format. I think it's almost like it was designed specifically for people playing for as long as I have, and be even slightly longer in terms of the sets that are in it. I was a big advocate for oh my god, what was it called? It was so embarrassing to think this is a real thing. Frontier. Do you remember Frontier?
I do
That
remember
was like a
Frontier,
fan
yeah.
made for. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a little bit smaller than Pioneer, but it was like yeah, it was just and saying, oh, we want a format that plays cards we used to play in standard, but not modern. So yeah, I played a lot of Pioneer, even before COVID, before my break and all that. So Pioneer definitely seemed like the obvious choice for me to come back into it, especially because there was we have a weekly Pioneer event in Gamers World in town every week. So that was kind of a great way to kind of get back into it. And then as well, I settled a bunch of cards from that. And then yeah, a lot of my peers also had cards to borrow and lend, and wasn't too prohibitively expensive to just buy a deck outright, which yeah, I eventually did.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I agree with that. I bought my Pioneer deck as well. It wasn't, you look at formats like Modern and you see Money Pile, and you just like, oh, okay. Is that the direction Magic's going? I think it might have been Liam once said, I hope we never get like Pioneer Horizons, because I think that would be the death knell. That would be the point where everyone's like, okay, like
Yeah, I think yeah. Yeah,
modern.
just to get it there. Modern Horizons was the worst thing to happen to Magic since
What?
Pascal Maynard picked it. No, I won't pick up Pascal Maynard anymore. Yeah, I think Modern Horizons was. I think Modern Horizons has changed, and both Modern Horizons. They just changed Modern from it being like a Hall of Fame of standard decks throughout Magic's history to now being a Modern Horizons blocks constructed set
Yeah.
format, something like that.
Like I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the initial premise of Modern Horizons was to just like reprint expensive cards, and I really liked that idea. And they would maybe throw in a couple of exclusive cards, but now we're at a point now where, we have the 5 pitch elementals, for example, and they are wildly played in many decks, in many formats. They're all mythic. They're all absurdly expensive, and it's just very prohibitive format. Don't really enjoy that. Pioneer, definitely much more open, much more enjoyable. I really like a format that has no fetch lands, for the record. Because fetch lands, as strong and powerful as they are, and I like playing with strong and powerful cards in paper, they are really annoying. It's really annoying when every player is just fetching every turn. It takes so much time off the clock at the end of the day. So it's really nice to play a format that doesn't have fetch lands. That's another thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so Red Black's the deck that you ended up on. Um, how did you end up? There was the thought process that led you to think that Red Black was going to be your deck of choice.
Yeah, so I think the reason why I picked Red Black is the same reason why any Red Black player picks Red Black, is because of the hubris of thinking, oh, if only I played a fair mid-range deck, I'll show all these people how good at Magic I am. Because I think when I started back in Pioneer, I was playing like 5-color humans deck, which I really enjoyed playing, but that's definitely just a fairly linear deck that doesn't have much interaction. And then when we look across the table, I'll be seeing other people going into tot seizing and removing, casting removal spells. And I've always been a fan of grindy mid range decks, and this seemed to do just all of that, and while still being kind of quite powerful in a format with lots of linear decks.
Yeah. And it does get to play, in my opinion, one of the best cards in the entire format, Fable and Mirror Breaker, which is just ridiculously, ridiculously good cards. And like that, I think that's really whenever you realize that Treasure Cruise is in the format, like Fable and Mirror Breaker being one of the best cards in the format, I think should, like, maybe I'm just wrong, and I'm not wrong though. Fable is one of the best cards. Like
Yeah.
Fable is just really, really good. So everybody put 4 Fable and Mirror Breaker in your deck. Yeah, I think I ended up like, how much of it was like preference to mid range decks for you in that decision? Because I know for me, I definitely lean towards a mid range deck. that gives me uh, plenty of decisions. But like if I'm not adverse to if mono red's the best deck in the format, I'll play mono red. Are you similar in that way, or would you always lean on whatever potentially the best mid range deck is?
Yeah, so I suppose back when I had a larger collection, I definitely would be better at kind of just choosing whatever was the best deck at the time or the best position deck. I think yeah, choosing kind of a strong mid range deck while kind of buying back into the game and buying into the format was certainly seem like the best starting point. Uh, it's kind of funny. Even I think a lot of people have this experience when you just look at a deck list for Red Black mid range, like all the cards themselves, just they don't seem like individually good cards, and there just doesn't really seem to be a very strong draw to play it. But then once you actually do play it and when you cast that Fable the Mirror Breaker, you realize how good it is and how so much of the deck fits together so well. And it has all the tools it needs to combat all of the other nonsense happening in the format.
Yeah, like I don't think there's any atrociously bad matchups for Black Red. I think I've said this every week on the podcast for the last 4 weeks or so because we are exclusively a Red Black podcast these days. But yeah, I don't think there's any atrociously bad matchups out there. If you want to beat a certain deck, the tools are available to you. Um, just like any format though, like you're not going to have 100% good matchups across the board. There are going to be some, but you can definitely tweak your deck a little to you know make up some percentage points for sure. And it's kind of surprising me that red black is the color combination that has allowed us to do that. Usually you associate that with blue white control decks. I find in the past, they're usually the kind of decks that you can tweak to any metagame and have an advantage. But black red midrange seems to be that deck for this format.
Yeah, and I think what's even surprising as well is how it's certainly obviously Red Black has some very good matchups, and surprisingly, Blue White Control is its good matchup,
Yeah,
which I guess flies in the face of convention. You got the triangle of aggro mid range control and how the Pokemon situation, rock paper scissors, I should say, and then that's goes out the window that it has good matchup against the aggressive decks and the control deck.
yeah,
It's just very resilient, has lots of tools and tons of decisions you can make, like I said.
yeah, for sure. Like I think the Manland suite is what really helps in those control matchups, and also Castle Lochthwain. I think having those almost free quote unquote threats, that you're playing as lands. Like obviously they have a couple of copies of Field of Ruin, but like so if they're activating Field of Ruin to deal with their man lands, then they don't have enough mana to be dealing with your other threats. Thoughtseize is a really, really powerful card in the matchup. You can really mess up their turns by casting a Thoughtseize at the right time. It's not that hard to put pressure on them. Blood Tithe Harvester into Bone Crusher Giant is a very real board that they need to deal with. And if they are tapping out for Supreme Verdict on turn 4, then you're playing a Chandra on your turn, and you're probably going to win the game that way then. It's just very, very hard for them to be able to deal with all your threats, I find, in that matchup. It's like, I played like a 40-minute game 1 against Blue White Control at the weekend there, where I was able to grind out the Blue White Control player as the Red Black mid-range player.
Yeah, God, that's crazy, Jesus. Yeah, especially game 1 going long and you winning
Yeah,
is insane when you're not bringing your
they
sideboard cards in. And
they
yeah,
cast 3 copies of Teferi Hero Dominaria in that matchup, and by the end of the game, I still had like more resources than them. Like,
oh my
yeah,
God.
mad. I did like I knew the matchup. I knew the matchup was good. Didn't think it was. It's very one sided in my opinion. Very, very one sided. Um, but we'll get to the matchups a bit later.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you've chosen your deck. You're prepared. Walk us through the day of the tournament and how you felt through the day. Were you confident going in? Did you think like I'm gonna not like walk this, but I feel like I have a very good chance? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I was actually very confident going in, which I have no shame in admitting. Because I suppose my approach, I've always had a very brute force approach to Magic. I'm tournament preparations that I'm not going to be fiddling around the sideboards and changing this card, this card. I'm just going to find a 75 I like and just play it 100 times a moto on the week leading up to it. And then know everything, know the deck inside out, know the matchups inside out, and just take it down that way. So I got enough reps in that I was very very happy going in. Yeah, going in with it. And I think a good omen at the very start was I was paired against my opponent round one. We were kind of sitting down waiting for the player meeting to happen. During as we were waiting, we rolled to see who goes first, and I lost a dice roll. And then we're told that there was a repairing, and then we repaired, and then in the repairing, I won the dice roll. So once that happened, I was like, this is my day. Main character syndrome.
Yeah, that's a very, 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 very good sign. Sounds like we have a very similar approach to how we tested for this tournament at the weekend. Just grinding a bunch of games in Modo, getting to know our deck very well, get to know all the interactions as well as we can, what cards are important in certain matchups, things like that. That fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I think we landed on a very similar 75.
We did.
I know we shared a deck list at some point, and we had 59 in common out of 60 for our main, and then maybe two different cards in our sideboard. We very came to very kind of similar conclusions, by the end.
Yeah, I think one of the funny things actually where we both landed on the same opinion in the end was I think it was only like a week or so ago that we were saying like Sky Sovereign. Why would we play Sky Sovereign? Sky Sovereign sucks. It's good in one matchup. Just play your copies of Invoke Despair and be happy. And then all of us showed up with a copy of Sky Sovereign in our sideboard. Yeah, it's funny how quickly that opinion changed.
Yeah, and I think it's funny as well. I don't know if you had a braids in your sideboard, but I had a braids in my
I did.
sideboard as well, which was in anticipation of people playing Sky Sovereign as
Yep.
well. So I definitely, I suppose I was like convinced myself to play Sky Sovereign during the week, and then I think I actually only resolved it once, I think, and that wasn't great when I resolved it. I think it was maybe that was just the one weekend for Sky Sovereign, and maybe Sky Sovereign's time has come and gone, which usually happens with that card. It's always just a very small window where where it can show itself. Um, but it is kind of funny seeing, those little kind of tweaks and changes that we're definitely kind of on the same wavelength, coming into the tournament.
Yeah.
With the same data.
Because like it, if you think about it like this, it makes sense from this standpoint, and maybe your conclusion is the exact same. But we had two copies of Invoke Despair in the sideboard mainly for the mirror. Sky Sovereign, very good in the mirror also, but also has a couple of applications in, maybe like one other matchup. In Racksack, Jund Sacrifice. And Invoke Despair has applications in other matchups. So, like, based on that, kind of makes sense to have the 1-1 split. But I think going forward, I would just play the two copies of Invoke Despair. I think Sky Sovereign is still potentially better in the mirror, but now there's more copies of a Brid, so that might not even be true anymore. And Invoke Despair has wider application, I think, than Sky Sovereign. So I think I would go back to 2 Invoke Despair going forward myself.
Yeah, definitely, and that's my approach to sideboarding as well. In terms of, you want to try, you want to have your sideboard slots that hit multiple matchups at once. So there was a time when I was playing the likes of damping sphere, and what's it called, the Little Moon, not Blood Moon. Tiny Moon, Alpine Moon. There we go. 1 mana moon. For it's like, this hits green, black. This hits mono green, and this hits Lotus. But then, kind of realizing that we're never going to grind. We're never going to win by denying mana from the mono green player. We need to go under. We need to be aggressive from the start. We need to be destructive from the start. So then that made those cards worse in that matchup. And then you're thinking, well, can we just survive these cards just for Lotus Field? And I took the risky approach of just taking them out. And just leaving myself wide open to Lotus Field. I had very, very few options if I came across the Lotus Field matchup. Fortunately, there was one player at the tournament who was on Lotus Field. I managed to avoid him, but
I did not.
I don't think you didn't.
Yeah, I got that very fortunate pairing in round 4. We almost won. We almost won. Without making it sound too much like a bad beat story, we lost the round 2-1. Game 1, they had 0 cards in hand and were dead over the course of 2 attacks. Their draw for the turn is Mastermind's Acquisition. They get Approach of the Second Sun and cast it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So they're back to 0 cards in hand. Everything's fine. I'm going to attack them again, and they're going to be dead on the next turn. So that's exactly what I do. And then they draw their card for the turn. It's like Shimmer of Possibility. Oh God, here we go. Pour over the pages. Oh God, here we go. But they still needed an untapped land, which, to be fair, not that unlikely. But they still needed an untapped land off to pour over the pages to cast it Approach Second Sun. They hit it, and we died game 1. Like, okay, fair enough. And then a very similar thing happened in game three, as well. One of the funny things that to be fair, the Lotusfield player I think was a very very good Lotusfield player. So shout out to Gabriel, I think his name was. Shout out to Gabriel. Um, One of the funny things I did in that matchup was I boarded in Lifebane Zombie just because like I didn't have enough cards for all the spot removal that I was taking out. So just boarded in Lifebane Zombies as a 3-mana 3/1 attacker. And I ended up discarding it to Fable the Mirror Breaker at one point, and my opponent kind of like reaches over, and is like, what does that card do? Like, it's a 3-mana 3/1. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, pretty funny. But yeah. So what matchups did you end up playing on the day? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I was against Mono Green round one. So
Good
this,
start.
I guess, like I said, it's certainly a winnable matchup. I think it's one of the more challenging matchups. And I was kind of happy with my sideboard plan and stuff for this. And game one unfolded kind of the way you expected to. That I had early disruption, I had early interaction. I was beating down. I got him down. I got my opponent down to 2 life, and then they started kind of going off and doing all their stuff. And at one point, I was thinking, God, like, should I? Because it takes a long time for a mono green player to win, and I was thinking, God, do I just concede here, go to game two? But I can't do that when I could potentially just draw, stomp, and win. But I was thinking about it, especially since the win is coming, was going further and further out of reach, and then very unfortunately for my opponent, they left themselves dead on board, with 2 blockers and I had 3 creatures, and they had an untapped Wolfwillow Haven, and they passed the turn to me. And then just as I was just during my upkeep, I said, "Oh, that's Wolfwillow Haven. That's a sorcery only, isn't it?" And then you just see their reaction, which that's the reaction I live for, opponent salt. And then yeah, then when my sideboard plan, then I took down game two handily enough. Then that.
Nice. And then so you played Mono Green round one, and round two.
Yes, round two was against Abzan Greasefang. This is Luke. He's probably watching. Hello, Luke. On Abzan Greasefang, which I think was a great choice for the weekend.
Yeah.
And I think we had some good games. Very close. I think that match came into maybe like 1 or 2 decisions in terms of hand disruption or interaction. It was one of those matchups where you feel like you can die at any moment, and you're kind of thinking like, should I just hold up removal all the time, or do I ever take the risk and tap out? Thinking, I guess, kind of wondering, can they set up the win from having very few resources? And I think Abzan does the best job of doing that because they can instant speed Grizzly Salvage and kind of get themselves set up from seemingly nowhere. And they have the draw discard on a few of those effects. Yeah. But those are some good games, and I ended up taking that down. I was quite surprised I did. But
my approach to that matchup is sounds very similar. My approach is that if I can afford to play around the combo, then I always do. As long as I'm not like leaving myself too far behind on boards by holding up to 2 mana for the Abrids or the 1 mana for the Fatal Push, then I am always just going to play it safe and not take the risk. Because like you say, all they need to do is cast a Grizzly Salvage, put a Parhelion in the graveyard, and get a Greasefang from the Grizzly Salvage. Like, that's all that needs to happen. They can do that from literally nowhere. So, just if you have it, if you can afford to play around it, then do. If you can make it believable that you do have the removal spell, and then like that's a much closer decision, in my opinion, because you could just slam your graveyard or your Bone Crusher Giant or whatever it is, and try and start a race, but then you're of course saying to your opponent, I have nothing. So just go for it. There is a very fine balancing act there, I find, and I'm not sure what the right thing to do is whenever I don't have it, and it probably is still pretend that you have it, right?
I know that's it, yeah, and I think it's it's just change your approach based on either the player you're playing against. Like, it's almost kind of how much you respect the player. I just have a memory of my first GP in Amsterdam. Everyone was playing Aetherworks Marvel, the Ulamog Aetherworks Marvel version. Dave Murphy, who also might be listening. Hello, Dave. He's a very good Magic player, but he was not doing well. He was He's down in the loser brackets, and he's playing against this deck a lot. And he was giving out how, I'd have I'll leave all my mana open on turn 4, and they just jam it. They don't have any respect for the gate. They don't have respect for removal. They just jam it in. And I was starting into Magic at the time. I was like, oh well, I certainly wouldn't be playing around removal. So I think in the Greasefang matchup, it's like you could be taxing yourself a lot by holding up that removal spell.
Yeah.
But sometimes you might just go for it. It's like, and then maybe I guess it's really you need to just absorb as much information as you can to make that decision.
Yeah.
So they also play post forward. They also play their protection spell. Is it Hexproof something or other? Tameo's
Tameo's
safekeeping. Yeah. So it's I suppose they probably will just go for it. That was a tricky one.
Yeah. Very 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 fine balancing act, but I think it's always nice to bring it back to this used to be like a poker podcast, and you made a really good point of like, depending on your opponent, you might want to change how that approach works. If you think that they're going to respect the removal spell, or if you think that they're going to respect your huge bets, then go for it. And vice versa. So I think that's a very 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 good point to make. So yeah, we get through the Swiss. You finished with a 4-1-1 record, is that correct?
4-1, yeah.
So what was your loss to, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so my loss is against Red Black Sack, which I think is a pretty tough matchup.
Yeah.
There was a moment when my opponent cast a card and I read the card and I was like, I've never seen this card before. Is this definitely legal in the format? It was Eaten Alive. Would you know Eaten Alive off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head.
This is a crazy card. I might be misrepresenting it here, but it's what is it? Yeah, so it's a sorcery. It's a single black mana. It's additional cost, sacrifice creature or pay, I think maybe 3 extra mana. Sacrifice creature, exile target creature planeswalker. So they'd like sacrifice a cat for 1 mana and then kill a Chandra. Like it was, I just thought it was crazy. And I think the fact that they have that card just made the matchup seem very, very difficult. That was the one time I did resolve Sky Sovereign, and I it wasn't very impressive there. But yeah, I think it does seem like a fairly resilient deck. It's very hard to put pressure on them because they have so many ways to block. They can kind of block the cat. They're also playing the red 1-drop, the something witness, unlucky witness, unfortunate witness, unlucky witness. Yeah. Which when they block, you're giving them cards then as well. You need to give them some card selection. So it's, I suppose mainly it's probably just more so a matchup I didn't have too much experience with. So I was kind of taking the same approach of disrupt them early and then beat them down. But even when they were disrupted, they're still very much able to buy themselves a lot of time from turn to turn, and eventually just kind of climbing back and getting that mayhem devil down and putting down the board.
So I played against Rucksack at the weekend as well. I won my matchup, luckily enough. So the most important card in the matchup, would you believe, I think, is Kalidas. It stops all the die triggers, it stops all the cat shenanigans, and I was lucky enough to be able to play Kalidas on turn 4 both games, and my opponent just to be completely cold to it as well, which was definitely very fortunate, because I lost round 1. I played against this round 2. Whenever they went turn 1 Oven, I was like, oh god, okay, this might be a very swift 0-2, because the matchup's definitely not like unwinnable. It might be like 55-45 in their favor. So yeah, well, I wasn't super happy to see it, but then early Kalidas and them having no answer to it was just chef's kiss.
Exactly.
Like it's very hard for them to deal with Kalidas as well, because like their main source of removal is Claim the Firstborn. I'm pretty sure they're playing Fatal Push as well, but Kalidas dodges Claim the Firstborn, is what I'm trying to say. Very, very well. Being 4 mana, very good against Claim the Firstborn.
Yeah. I like 4 mana spells.
So yeah, Kalidas definitely key in that matchup. I dare say. So yeah, you're 4-1-1, and then you get paired in the quarterfinals against my travel buddy, Mr. Dean Convery, who is playing Is a Pyro. I remember playing Dean only in a couple of game 1 scenarios a couple of weeks ago, just while we were cubing, just doing some having some Pioneer fun on the side, and that matchup felt unwinnable because they were not only putting pressure on early, they were generating card advantage through virtual card advantage through Young Pyromancer, and then once you dealt with their boards, then they were very very good at just drawing treasure cruise, casting treasure cruise, and then you're dead. I find that matchup pretty tough, certainly in a game one scenario. But obviously our RCQ champion managed to prevail. So how did that go for you?
Yeah, I didn't find the matchup too difficult. I certainly it is entirely possible I got lucky. Again, it's a matchup I'm not too familiar with. Game one, I multi five, which myself being even joking again, like, oh, this is it, this is how it's over, and I'd have to have such a good Swiss in the end with a Vulcan five. Then I ended up winning game one even on five. I think, yeah, I think I did get quite lucky. There was one particular point when I was about to stabilize. He had three 1/2 press creatures in play, one card in hand, a whole lot of mana. He attacked three of them. I think it might have been I had a 2/2 Goblin Shaman to block. And I was thinking about whether or not I block. I was on 10 life. I was thinking like, oh, if I can get back into the game, start making mana and casting spells. If I can attack with this next turn, do I need to just take the damage, whatever it is? Like, but if he goes, cantrip in a burn spell, it's over. And I was very fortunate that when I said no blocks, I just took 3 damage just from the creatures. So it must have just been a blank, blank in his hand. And I feel that was the moment when the game turned around and then it came back. So I think if not for that, it would have been a lot more difficult. And then I just kind of approached matchups very similar to the Boros Rogue matchup where it's just remove each of the creatures. I think, I suppose, yeah, even the way you described it there, I think this certainly is a lot more resilient than the Boros Heroic deck. The Boros Heroic deck, I guess, has a lot more protection, but the fact that Isopraeus can just reload so well with the likes of Treasure Cruise, sorry, would make it more make it more difficult. So I think just loading up on removal spells was how I got there.
Yeah, it seems fair enough. And also, like, Dean and I never played any post board games. Like, obviously, our sideboards are very similar, so I can imagine, like, just going off, my sideboard's plan in my head, like, the addition of cards like Go Blank and Extinction Event probably would have really helped, assuming you did bring in Extinction Event.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So those kind of cards seemed like they would go a really, really long way to improving that matchup. Go blank against any deck trying to cast Treasure Cruise is it's some going, I must say.
Yeah. I saw a Phoenix player draw at one point a Treasure Cruise off top of their deck while their opponent had a ley line of the void in play, and they had no graveyard. So it's like, oh, a nice
Embarrassing.
8 mana draw three. I don't even know what CMC of Treasure Cruise is. It's,
It is. It's
7
it.
mana. It's 8 mana. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually you rarely see a cast rate.
Rarely do. There's generally a reason for that. 8 mana, not a great rate for 4 cards or 3 cards. Yeah, I had the same thing happen whenever I played against Phoenix as well. Playing my winning in, and I went Thoughtseize, and I had Unlicensed Hearse in my hands, and I saw they had a hand that was like full of treasure cruises and stuff. It's like, well, this is it. I think I'm pretty good here. So yeah, did not take a treasure cruise. Would you believe it? That Thoughtseize. Can't remember what I took, but didn't matter because I was going to be exiling the whole graveyard. They weren't going to be doing a lot that game with my Unlicensed Hearse. So yeah, Unlicensed Hearse is another card that makes Treasure Cruise pretty embarrassing. Pretty funny whenever I saw that as well. So we defeat our Is a Pyromancer player in the quarterfinals, and then in the semifinals, you get paired against your round 2 opponent, Mr. Luke Smith again.
Back to Luke Scott. Yeah, it was
or Luke Scott. Sorry, Luke Smith is a player from up here. Sorry, Luke.
Oh yeah. No, it was obviously great to have the rematch, especially when we were kind of talking afterwards. They kind of lines that could have gone differently in game one, in rather the first time we played against each other. Certainly looking forward to a rematch. And I feel like, I guess, the luckiest thing that happened to me was that Luke had beaten the Lotus player in the previous round in the quarterfinals. So I was very happy to be playing, even though I guess they're both tough matchups. I certainly knew how to approach Abs and Greasefang a lot more than I know how to approach Lotus Field. Especially, I don't even have dresses in my sideboard, so that was I was leaving myself wide open. Wide open there. So I was on the play against Luke, and I'm trying to. Oh God, what happened then? I think I won game 1, lost game 2, and game 3 was the important one. Game 3, I mulliganed to 6.
Game 3 usually the
I'm
important one.
Yeah, I guess I guess so. I guess there was the game 3 is what I should be saying.
Sure.
Look, game 3 I mulliganed down to 6, and I think it was a bad keep. Actually, looking back, it was a mulligan to 6 with 7 cards, were 5 lands, a Kalidas, and a Fabled the Mirror Breaker. And I just said to myself I didn't want to go to 5, and I just kept them. I was like, I'll probably draw into something, which interaction early is so important against Greenswang. I don't know what I was thinking. So I played a land. Opponent went Thoughtseize. I Thoughtseized away my Cletus, and I was like, this is actually like he picked the wrong card, but I still think this is going to be bad for me. I played a land turn 2 and passed, and then he cast Duress and took Fable, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is over.
That's it.
So I just left with those cards in hand, and then for turn 3 on I tapped and just drew another Fable. And just slammed it on the table. I said, I'm very good at Magic the Gathering, and that was, I guess, was the highest variance moment of the I guess you could say the luckiest moment of the day.
Yeah, it sounds like a very important one. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I think it did lead up to my demise. And so I cast Fable back to them. Opponents was kind of setting up. I discarded 2 cards. I was very happy to discard 2 land cards into Fable. I drew into a Graveyard Trespasser and something else. I cast Graveyard Trespasser, began Interact with the Graveyard, passed to them. Yeah, and then back and the turn came back to me. I was looking forward very much to attacking my Graveyard Trespasser to stop them from going off. But then it was in my second main phase I realized that I hadn't picked up my Fable to the third part. I know you called the judge over, and in fairness, I've always been fairly au fait with, like, usually you can draw a card and then you can pause for a while and then be like, oh yes, and also my Fable thing. But because I'd gone to attacks and Luke had gone to blocks, all of that kind of stuff had happened. I wasn't able to. It was deemed a mistrigger, which is fair enough. And I was so annoyed at myself that, because at this point my Graveyard Trespasser had flipped. Oh, sorry, after Luke's next turn, back to me, Graveyard Trespasser had flipped. Now my Fable's finally flipping, and to have if my Fabled Mirror Breaker or my Kiki Jiki didn't have someone to stick this at that time, the game would be over so quickly.
Yeah.
And I was kicking myself. I was like, oh, if and I was even thinking, like, Jesus, I'm going to get so much abuse from all the lads that I just thrown away such a I guess a game I got so fortunate with by drawing that Fable and then not even using it to its full extent. Was I was almost tilting myself off. But then I was very, very fortunate that Luke was setting up his turn, was about to win. Okay, not so much about to win, but about to do what he wanted to do. He had a what's it called? He had a Boseiju in hand. Boseiju in hand. He cast one spell, had Boseiju in hand. I think he just took the default of, usually you want to cast spells like that, effects like that in your opponent's draw step. Mm-hmm. So in case they draw that land, they can't get it in, that kind of stuff. It's very big. 90% of the time makes sense to do it then. But he passed the turn to me, which allowed me then to untap with my Kiki Jiki without summon sickness. So then he targeted Kiki Jiki with Boseiju, and I was then able to copy my I copied the Flip Trespasser with that, and then that wound up being lethal. So it was something that I suppose my horrible punt was negated, you could say, by Luke's punt. Sorry, Luke. But then that's how it goes.
I mean, if you're going to win a Magic Gathering tournament, you just can't not get lucky throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
You have to get lucky. It's a fact of life. Like, no tournaments I've ever won have I just purely outplayed all my opponents. In fact, I probably outplayed very few of them and just gotten very lucky through the day. So yeah, like you have to get lucky. And being very skillful at Magic the Gathering certainly helps.
Exactly. Yeah. It was at one point my earlier opponents said, "Wish me best of luck for less determined." I said, "I don't need luck." I said, it's my opponents that need to. I want to have not be lucky. I want my opponents to have bad luck, not so much to be getting good luck. But then, boy, did I get some good luck though in that game.
Yeah. And then we get to the finals, and I think it's fair to say you played against your most handsome opponent of the day. Would that be correct?
Possibly. I think that is probably fair to say. Yeah. The mirror match, you might say.
Yeah, the mirror match. Very, very, very handsome mirror match. Like, talented. So, yeah, so we end up playing in the finals. You're on the play. You are higher in the standings. I am just off the back of a very grindy mirror match myself. That I too have had to get pretty lucky and rely on potential misplays from my opponent to get to the finals. Um, I think I'm pretty tired at this point. Usually my mental stamina is usually pretty good throughout the day of a match tournament. I'm used to playing like 12 plus hours at GPs, for example. So I might have lost that over the last 5 years. Since I last played a paper tournament, so I am pretty tired at this point. And yeah, like I don't. How were you feeling going into that? Were you feeling it was a long day of Magic.
Yeah, that definitely was. Yeah, I feel like when it comes to fatigue for me like that, mental fatigue, it usually kind of comes at like one big lump at once and then goes away. So I've definitely felt it during that game three against Luke when I made that mistake. That I felt like, oh my god, I'm far too tired to be playing this game. But then I think by the time we started, I was back ready to go again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's like a small window where where things are looking rough for me. Definitely, yeah, because it was 6 rounds as well. I usually because we had 38 players, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that hits the threshold for 6 rounds. It's a lot of rounds.
Yeah, like I think every other RCQ we've had here in Ireland so far has been 5 rounds. That's been the largest one I think we've had. Largest Pioneer tournament that's ever taken place in Ireland. And I think it's fair to say that that was probably larger than the majority of PPTQs. The PPTQs I remember playing were like 16 people at most.
Yeah, yeah. I think there might be one or two big ones, but they never reached the 6 round threshold, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, really good to see that from a competitive standpoint again. I hope we have the we. I remember playing a 7 round PTQ here in Ireland, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I remember that one being a modern tournament. I played Jund at that one, Boomer Jund. When Boomer Jund was actually, just Jund because it was not that old. Yeah, we had a 7 round PTQ. I think there were like 70 or 80 people, which was really really cool. I would love to get us back to that at one point.
Yeah.
Um, but one small step at a time. We're going in the right direction. So very very cool to see. So yeah, we talked about it at the top of the show. There might be new people here who didn't hear that part of the conversation, but definitely one of the stranger games of Magic the Gathering that have occurred. So yeah, I do you want to? You are the guest. Do you want to retell?
Yeah. So as I said, I kept what I thought was a very good hand. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of two landers in red black usually you get there, especially when you have your redraw with yeah, Bloodtide Harvester.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kept two lander. I think I had two Bunkers Giants. I can't remember the exact hand apart from that. Well, it having two lands was the main thing, and I wound up being stuck in two lands for many turns. And I think on over 2 turns in a row, my play was a stomp you,
Yeah.
and I go on. But then you had yeah, I think I did Thought Seize you turn one, and you had two Croxes in hand. Both of those Croxes both wound up in the graveyard, and then by the time I guess just before you could get your wheels turning again, I drew that third land, and then I played a Graveyard Trespasser one turn, and then second Graveyard Trespasser the second turn, exile on both Croxes, and then bringing me back in.
Yeah.
Which yeah,
I
which I was surprised as well that happened.
I think at that point my hand was two Croxes, and Fable of the Mirror Breaker was the other key card because I think that's the card you took. It was the card that I was
Yeah.
kind of reliant upon really, which would have made a huge difference in that matchup. I have only ever discarded 2 copies of Croxid of Fable of the Mirror Breaker once, but it was a great feeling, and I was really excited to do it again. But whenever you're playing these Thoughtseize mirrors, sometimes you just don't always get what you want, do you?
Yeah.
So yeah, ended up that I was mana flooded, you were mana screwed. You eventually drew your third land, and I didn't quite make my way out of the flood. So game one ended up going to yourself, and then game two, there was definitely a point where I thought, okay, I think I'm pretty good here because I basically cast Invoke Despair. Usually when you cast Invoke Despair, you're going to win, right? But then, like, the turn after, I think I asked you like or you asked me how many cards I had in hands. Like, oh, I've got one card in hands. And like, how many cards do you have? I have 7. Oh, well, great. Okay.
Yeah, that's something I found so strange. You know, I was something I was working back. Like, went for a few went for a few drinks afterwards, and you know, both of the talked to Dave, both Dave Murphy there, but like, how did that happen? How did you have 7 cards in hand? And then I was like replaying, you know, because um on our own Discord, Dave Wolf had very kindly done a play-by-play, so it was great to
Mhm.
kind of play it back and count the cards, and everything made sense. Dave Murphy was thinking like, God, did the DJ like miss a draw step at one point? And we're like, there's no way we would have been. I think that would have been very clear if that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was like a combination of. I suppose yeah, I have the transcript of the game here in front of me, so um yeah, you played you turn two, played a harvester, I stomped it. You played a trespasser, I fabled. And then yeah, at one point I attacked with my godman shaman for the fable. So that was if I sorry I you killed it pre-combat,
Yeah.
and if I had attacked with that, I would have been casting Invoke Despair first. So I guess my motivation for that attack was to give me enough mana to cast Invoke Despair. So you yeah fail push that, and then I played out a giant and castle. So I had a fable with 2 counters on it, and a giant to play, and then yeah you slammed Invoke Despair, which seemed like a very good Invoke Despair because you're hitting 2 permanents,
Mhm.
and then I lose to life, and then you draw a card, and then
If you think about that, though, like you're actually losing a card off the Invoke Despair there, aren't you? Because you're only playing one copy of a card, but you get to sacrifice 2 things to the Invoke Despair. So you're only down like 1 card in that exchange when I should be up 1 more card essentially. So like in terms of Invoke Despairs in the mirror, probably one of the more okay ones, more acceptable
yeah,
ones.
exactly. Yeah, which seems very counterintuitive because you know it did quote unquote hit 2 things, but
Mm.
yeah, I think if you kind of think of it as my giant had already gotten your Bloodtide Harvester, and then my Fable had already kind of eaten your Fatal Push. So I suppose in a way though, there are those 2 active opponents I had in play, which I guess kind of speaks to how resilient the Red Black deck can be.
Yeah.
And then yeah, you had Trespass. Yeah, so you had a Trespasser in play. Then I played Vote Despair. So then that was you sacrificing 1 permanent. I suppose it's probably a higher value permanent. It being a trespasser that would cost me 2 cards to
Mm-hmm.
kill otherwise, and then we drawn 2 cards from that. And then yeah, I think that was the point when yeah you had on your turn you harvested Hearst back to me, and then that's when you had 1 card in hand and I had 7. And then
Yeah.
that's just like how did we get here? Well, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful hand.
Yeah. It would like whenever you told me you had 7 cards, and I was like, okay, this game's over.
God, yeah.
I'm already thinking about next Saturday and how I'm gonna win next Saturday instead. But yeah, like obviously you went on to convert at that point. You won the whole tournament again. Big congratulations. Very 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 deserved. I dare say. So congratulations again. But tournament's over now. I think we've already talked about potentially one change we would make in the sideboard going back to the second Invoke Despair, but was there any cards maybe underperformed that you'd change coming out of the weekends, or anything you'd like to try?
I don't think so. Yeah, I very much liked my sideboard. I liked Life Bane Zombie a lot. When that was relevant. I think going back to Invoke is very good. I think the stat mirror just showed how Invoke Despair kind of fills that kind of really attacks all the different axes plural, all the different axes you want to hit in a lot of matchups. While something like a big fire drop like Sky Sovereign or Glorybringer would only hit one. Um, I was asking around about kind of seeing how that matchup played out. Something like you kind of see how maybe something like this is probably going to be crazy talk, but like a Sign in Blood or a Read the Bones kind of effect could also be good in the mirror since card advantage wound up being so important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because you just look at both of our 2 games and you'll see how both of those 2 games really played out on completely differently. And then yeah, like a Read the Bones or a Sign in Blood effect would have been very good in one game, but not very good in the other. So I think yeah, Invoke Despair just hits so much kind of really just attacks all of those fronts, while also just being a very nice defensive card. If you're, the fact that also it's so good against the likes of uh, blue white when they play that stupid creature. What's that called? The I didn't even need to
Dream
name it.
Trawler.
The Dream Trawler, yeah,
Yeah.
Dream Trawler, and you can occasionally get the odd thing. Like the hazard or whatever other random permanents to be difficult to deal with. I think second Invoke Despair I think is where you want to be for your 5-drop slot.
Yeah, because I find like for the blue white matchup, it's not a matchup where we need a lot of help anyway. But without that second copy of Invoke Despair, I was much more worried post board about Dream Trawler, to the point where I was boarding in the Life Bane zombies as well, just to try and hit the Dream Trawler.
Yeah.
So I would definitely feel better with the second copy of Invoke Despair in that matchup. Um, Probably just so that I don't have to bring in Life Bane zombie. I think doesn't feel great.
Yeah, I like things like it's the 3-1 that attacks through a lot of things. My opponent, at one point, I guess Goodbye had Life Bane Zombie in play, and he had a Sharknado, and he was very close to cycling Sharknado to block with a token. I was just like, please do it. But in the end, he didn't. He actually played Sharknado as a permanent instead, and that was much better later on. But still getting in for the beats. But the 3-1 black creature is what you want to do.
Yeah.
Intimidate.
Intimidate. Yep, that's the ability.
Great mechanic.
So yeah, fair to say then that the second copy of Invoke is probably the only change. Very happy with everything else.
Yeah, I think pretty happy with everything else.
What was the one difference we had in our 60?
Yeah, I was cut ribbons where you had Siren.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So then I think I just love just cheap removal in decks like this, and I was a big fan of Tenacious Underdog as well, because that just allows you so many turns where you play a threat and a removal spell. So I think cut ribbons really hits a lot of things you want to hit in the format, and also it is very nice randomly ribbonsing someone when I don't expect it by discarding to a blood token or something. But I think just the extra removal spell is quite nice.
I do like Cut the Ribbons, and it was the last cut I made like that morning. I replaced it for a third copy of Dreadbore in the end. And I'm okay with that change, but I do really like having Cut the Ribbons in my deck. I've discussed it on the podcast in a previous episode, but it's like really it's nice to have like that extra copy of a card that you don't feel bad discarding to a blood token or Fable.
Yeah.
The same way you would discard a Croxa, for example. You're discarding something that you can still get value from later. I do like Cut the Ribbons. Anybody who chooses to play Cut the Ribbons, I don't think that's a bad choice at all. I would love to find a way to get it back in there, but for now, I don't. I like my 60 and how it's positioned as well. But we've got 4 days before the next RCQ to figure that one out. So yeah, okay. We're not making any changes, not right now, but Liliana of the Veil has been spoiled. Is it fair to say that in the future we will need to make room for some number of Liliana of the Veil, and how many copies are you looking to play, if any at all?
Yeah, so that's what I was just thinking about this today was, and it's really, that's why I like my Magic so much. You can just be in the middle of work, doing something boring, this kind of stuff. Like, how many Liliana Veils do you play? Like, it's a 3-drop, obviously Planeswalkers, you usually want to jam 4 of them, but it is cheap, and we have discarded, so maybe we'll play 4. If you have tutor and you could discard 1 tutor, So yeah, I think it's one of those cards that I think will change the deck a little bit. I think it'll change the deck for the better. So one thought I did have was that maybe it can just be a straight replacement for Graveyard Trespasser, because if you look at both of those cards separately, they're rarely good in the same matchup. Whereas, a lot of times, I guess a lot of times when we take out Croxa is matchups where we don't want our opponent, our opponent can get value from discarding cards. Mm-hmm. So maybe we just have our Graveyard Trespasser sit in the sideboard, we main deck Liliana, and then in the matchups we want to bring Graveyard Trespasser in. I think the Venn diagram of matchups where Trespasser is good, Liliana's not quite as good, and that's just an easy swap. Maybe that's a too simplified a way of looking at it, but I guess that's how I started, I think.
Yeah. I think it was Misplaced Ginger, Twitch streamer, good guy. Check him out if anybody's unaware. Fellow Red Black enjoyer. He is very much of the opinion that Liliana of the Veil is going to be good. We're probably not going to want the full complement. And that the cut may be Bone Crusher Giant. And that Graveyard Trespasser is untouchable.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, as the second best card in the deck behind Fable the Mirror Breaker. That one, I mean, he has thousands of more matches with that deck than I do, I dare say. So willing to take his thoughts on that and assume that they're right. You know, because
Yeah.
my opinion on Graveyard Trespasser was waning a little over the last week or so.
Mm.
Like I did think the card was good. It was a little sticky in the sense that it was annoying to get rid of. Very hard to come out of that interaction even on cards. Um, but just like a little mopey, a little dorky. For everything else that was going on. Um, just wasn't sure, wasn't like as high on it as I was maybe at first, and I think a part of that was like less Phoenix presence going about. But yeah, my other thought with Liliana as well was that we probably would want to start playing more copies of cards like Tenacious Underdog to make the symmetry of the +1 more advantageous for us. I still think that's the case. And I I foresee a world where we will definitely be starting playing at least 2 copies of Liliana. And I wouldn't be surprised if that went up, you know, up in numbers as people realized like, oh, this card's just really really good. So yeah, I think Liliana is going to make a big splash in this deck. It might not be the cards. It might not be the deck even that Liliana is best in. That's probably still going to be Greasefang. I think Greasefang wants to jam 4 copies of Liliana from the off, personally. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out. So fair to say then that you think Liliana definitely has a home in Red Black.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. And I think I was the whole time I was thinking, Kieran, I was like, oh, I got while you were describing, I was like, I can't let go of my Bunkers Giants. They do so much. But yeah, I think I'm certainly open to experimenting different combinations and seeing kind of what needs to say, what needs to go, and yeah, definitely try to make room for it. And then like I said, I think that point of Nation Underdog is very good. That it will require more changes, and we will be kind of warping the deck around it because I think I think the power level of the card itself is that high.
Yeah.
That if we can, especially in a grindy deck like this, if we can just not deny our opponent so much resources while getting value out of it, whenever we tick her up, that'll be significant. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Madden in the chat saying, I look forward to sacrificing Old Growth Troll to Liliana and casting Ulamog on turn 3. I don't know if that works, but it's close. I don't think the -2 is the ability that's going to get activated in that matchup, to be honest. But wishful thinking. I like the optimism from Steve there. Okay. So yeah, I only have one more question for you, Al, before we wrap this up. How excited are you for Sophia?
Oh, I'm very excited indeed. Yeah, with my flights.
Nice.
Put time off work. I was working on site on Monday. I went in. I was like, "Hey, everybody! I won a Magic tournament. By the way, Magic the Gathering is this game. It's like poker and chess. Your wizards having a duel." And yeah, so I got to time off work. I got the flights booked.
Brilliant.
Ready to go. And most importantly, I've taken a vacation from my Mana Traders account. I've taken a quick break for I played a lot of Magic over the last couple of weeks. As we take a quick break until until the Dominaria United cards come in, and again we can start testing with Lydiana's and whatever new changes there are. But interestingly enough, Sophia is the day after Brothers War is released, so
Yes.
it'll be another whole season of spoilers to get through, and kind of wondering what changes to come in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd certainly like to have a kind of a pre Brothers War 75 lockdown before it comes out,
Yeah,
and then decide what to bring in. Like yeah,
that'll be some scramble to the dealers section on the day before the tournament, won't it?
yeah, I know it's I'm not looking forward to it. It wasn't actually me. It was David Wolf at a GP once was trying to find Dusk Legion Zealots. It's a common from Ixalan.
Yeah.
A common that none of the vendors have. Because so many vendors don't stock random commons or uncommons. It's a. And then I think he bought a bunch of packs, but then couldn't get it from packs. It's like,
Wow.
yeah, there's nothing worse than looking for, looking for a rare or mythic is one thing, but looking for a little common that's very important is pain.
Yeah. Looking for strictly worse Elvish Visionary and hoping to find it. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
mad. Um, and yeah, so funny story before our final started actually. Mentioning about going off to Bulgaria and stuff and the timing of it. So Bulgaria is 2 weeks before I get married. So before I start playing the final, I'm I've got this in the back of my head. Like, if I win this and go home and tell my fiance that I'm going to Bulgaria 2 weeks before we get married, is that bad crack on my part? I should probably just go outside and let her know that this is happening. So Al actually asks me before the final starts, like, "Hey, I don't suppose you have any plans on the weekend of Sophia? Do you any scoops going about?" Like, "Oh, no, 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 no." But I went outside and phoned my fiance, like, "Hey, like, is this cool if this happens?" She's like, "Yeah, of course it is. Why even phoning me? Like, of course it is. You just go do it." Like, okay, cool. So I got to go back in and tell Al the good news that, hey, no skips for
Great.
you. That we're going to
Oh,
play.
I know.
And then you crushed me anyway, so it didn't matter.
Play we did.
Play. We played Magic the Gathering, that is for sure.
Exactly.
So
So, I suppose, yeah, I guess I asked you then. Are you prepared, excited for Saturday? You're go at it
yeah,
again.
yeah, going at it again. Need to figure out the finer details of how I'm getting down, because there are rumors of a car going down from Belfast, which
Oh,
I'm trying to get in on, potentially, hopefully. Um, so yeah, we'll see how that works out, because that would be the easiest way. The tournament starts a little later than I, which is probably good for me traveling down from the north, right? It's going to
yeah,
be like a
exactly.
two
Yeah,
two
yeah.
and a half hour journey down on the train, so I can maybe get a slightly later train, wake up slightly later, because I was up at like 6 a.m.
God.
For last Saturday, um to get the train down and everything, and then I wasn't home until after midnight. Which, so it's a long old day, but definitely worth it.
Mm, yeah.
So yeah, I still need to figure out how I'm getting down, how I'm going to get home again. But by the signs of things, I am just going to spend the night in Dublin, and then
Great.
make my way back up on the Sunday. So yeah, looking forward to it. Very excited, feeling prepared. I think I will be making the Invoke Despair change. I have sourced my second copy of Unlicensed Hearse, so I'll be running that one as well. The only reason I didn't run it over a copy of Duress last Saturday was due to nobody having an unlicensed hearse
Hmm.
available. Which is the way it is. I should have been better prepared. Um, so yeah, that's a change I would have made last Saturday, just because the Duress matchups, other than like Lotus Fields, like I feel like you don't need the help that much. So I figured the second copy of Unlicensed Hearse to help shore up matchups like Phoenix would just be the way to approach it. So yeah, that's it. That's a change I'm going to be making for this Saturday. I'm going to play the second copy of Invoke Despair. Have toyed about with the idea of brewing some kind of Mardu mid range deck as an upgrade on the removal spells and the Planeswalkers, and playing Wandering Emperor and Vanishing Verse, but I tried that. Adding third color is just too difficult, too mana intensive. Didn't quite work out. Dean and I have also talked about a spicy red white mid range deck that looks to play Fable of the Mirror Breaker into Elspeth Conquers Death to uh,
Oh.
reanimate something like Elspeth Sun's Champion. Because we were thinking of like cards that aren't getting played in Pioneer at the moment that were really, really good back in the day and really, really powerful. Elspeth Sun's Champion came up.
Mm.
Okay, how do we, where's the best home for it? With like blue eye control, obviously, you can play some copies there. We just ended up on this red white deck that got to play Fable of the Mirror Breaker as well, because I'm a Fable of the Mirror Breaker mark. So yeah, I think that deck is sweet. But I think it misses a card like Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize just helps so much in like the majority of your bad matchups, and like it's just never really. It's one of the best cards in the format as well. The games where you go Thoughtseize and the Bloodtide Harvester and the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, like
Oh,
the that that's the best turn one, turn two, turn three, I think, in the format at the moment. So I don't think you can improve on that. Prove me wrong, chat. But yeah,
I'm sure they will. They'll find a way.
They'll find a way.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
rascals, scoundrels.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially like even like against Mono Green, which I guess supposedly is a bad matchup, but
Mm.
I won some game. I won a game of Moto once where I just fail pushed their elf turn one, then untapped cast a Thoughtseize, which happened to just hit them exactly where it hurt most, and then they just conceded there and then because it's like they didn't have the thing to ramp into, they missed their land drop, and yeah, I think just disruption on both of those two axes is yeah,
Word
is
of the
so
day.
good. And there we go. And we yeah, so I think certainly losing out black is pretty is a big loss for I guess a grindy kind of deck like this. Well, it's always it's one of these things. It's good to always kind of keep these options open and explore these other ideas because with more sets coming out, the mana is only going to get better.
Yeah,
I know we'll have we might have new fast lands, or I know we have some new pain lands coming in.
we do.
And there's all sorts of lands that might happen. They might reprint dual lands. We don't know.
Probably not before the regional championship, but in fact, almost certainly not because we're going to get pin lands, the rest of the pin lands in Brothers War by the looks of things. But I guess who knows? Who knows? They might throw us a curveball and print every dual land ever printed in the history of Magic the Gathering in Brothers War.
Yeah,
We just
because I
don't
mean,
know.
it is. Yeah, the Brothers War, after all, is a duel.
Yeah.
So
Oh
there
yeah,
you go.
great point. Yeah. Okay,
This is my
every dual
argument.
land confirmed.
Boom.
We did it.
72 dual lands.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's I think we'll wrap things up there. I'll just want to say thank you very much for coming on. Congratulations again. Good luck in Sofia. I hope to see you there.
Great, thank you, and I hope to see you too. And best of luck on Saturday. And
Thank you.
thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Ooh.
We would love to have you back at some point. I'm sure it'll happen. Just before we go, I want to say that if you have enjoyed listening to the podcast, if actually before I do that, Al, do you have anything you want to plug?
I guess I do. Yes, I am. I'm an author on the side. My Twitter is at Alan Harrison. I got very lucky with the old Twitter having my actual name. Yeah, I write fantasy books and they're up there. You'll find the links through my Twitter at Alan Harrison. There we go.
Buy Alan's books. You won't be
Yes.
disappointed, I promise. So yeah, if you've enjoyed listening to us, if you haven't already hit the follow button, please do. Really helps us out. We would really appreciate it as well. It's really nice to see that what we're doing. It's proof that you're enjoying what we're doing, and that's really nice to see. So if you haven't followed us already, give us a follow. We have links to our Twitter and YouTube channels around on the page as well. By all means, follow us there. I post pretty regular updates on Twitter about when we're going live, any impromptu streams, any. I also post deck text and stuff on Twitter that you can find there, and they're completely free. They're not behind a paywall or anything, so definitely follow us on Twitter. And yeah, there's also some exclusive YouTube content up there as well, so you should definitely subscribe to that as well. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you on Thursday night. Thanks again, Al.
Great, thank you. Cheers.